Hello there and welcome back to The Closet Historian, and welcome to the very first finished-ish room in my new old house. And why exactly did I begin with my dressing room slash closet boudoir-ish sort of a green room space? Well, sadly there was a bit of baseboard radiator in the way downstairs in the sewing parlor area, so I couldn't immediately get started on that space until I could figure out who needed to remove that, how I was going to have that removed, how much that was going to cost, all that jazz. So I needed to go ahead and start on other rooms while I was waiting. And I decided to begin with the nastiest kind of rooms of the house. There's a little linen closet across the hallway from me, from this room here, and that needed the most work. I'll be getting into that later. That is going to become my shoe and kind of overflow closet, and I have a lot more work to do in there still. But this room is across the hall. This is technically the smallest bedroom in my house, but now it is the largest closet. And while this room was a bit more ready to jump in and renovate compared to some of the others that needed a few less, I don't know, major fixes, there was still quite a bit to get done before I could actually decorate in here. Today I wanted to show you my inspirations for this room, show you the process of putting everything together, and talk a little bit more about how I hope to reorganize this in the future. Now, I did have a cold for most of this, however, so I will have to do some voiceover now because at the time when I was doing up this room, I didn't even have a voice at all to work with. So bear with me, let's go ahead and jump back in time and I'll show you how I got on. This room was the only room in the house that had carpet in it, and it was a very thin, sad gray carpet. And I thought it was kind of newer, that was my hope. But in fact, it was probably from the 1970s again, because beneath there was a just regular old piece of foam, I don't know, like padding, like upholstery padding foam almost, not like proper carpet padding underneath. And it had disintegrated, especially in where this desk chair was in here and the kind of wear pattern from the door to there. It was completely worn away and ground into a sort of sad, almost like dry rot powder. I would say that basically the carpet padding had become dry rotted. And so had the carpet, because it was we would try to roll it up and it would crack in half. So you could fold it like origami. So that's out of here now. Unfortunately, this floor, although it is stained and I think these planks are wider than these. So I think the hallway is original. It's got really stained and weird. But in here, unfortunately, this is just kind of subfloory sadness, and it's splintery and not finishable, although people have tried some interesting things over the years in here. And you can see the wood in there. So actually, because this is just going to be my closet room, you can hear it's very echoey in here. I am just going to do new carpet in this room. So we're getting some new carpet. And are you ready for the most satisfying clip of this entire video? That's right, the wallpaper peeled off the plaster in here, no problem, although it did leave a lot of glue residue behind for me to deal with. These clips are from when I first moved in, and my mom was still with me helping me move, and she luckily suggested that we paint the baseboards in here before the new carpeting went in, even though the rest of the room wasn't ready to do any decorating, and that was indeed, of course, a genius idea. All right, pals, I still have a cold. It is what it is. So for most of this room, I have cleaned the wallpaper gook off of the plaster. Oliver is here. Obviously the very top third of this wall still has its wallpaper glue, and also the wall behind the door here still has its wallpaper glue. Also, I need to put baseboards inside of here to finish off the look because the rest of the room has baseboards. Also, this closet was obviously added probably in the 1970s, probably because you can't call it a bedroom unless it's got a closet. They cut into the window trim to make this possible. So they cut into my nice original window trim to make that a thing. So I don't love that. And then also this drywall is not properly finished. As you can tell, they kind of just, I don't know, painted over raw drywall. So it's peeling off some of the paper there. It's gonna need some primer and then maybe some fill. And then down here where you can see this patch is kind of wider. I had knocked a hole inside of here to see how far the radiator cover went into this closet, which about a good 5 inches or so. I was able to get that old radiator cover off, and now we have the new ones, which is nice, but I had to patch my hole, so I did a California patch here, so that could use a little bit of drywall mud floating over that to even that out as well. The wallpaper glue doesn't come off of this like raw drywall as well as it comes off the wall. I mean, this is both unwashed, but you can see the wallpaper glue on the plaster really sits on top of the plaster, whereas over here, I don't even know if the wallpaper glue mostly came off with the paper, and then all this needs to be washed off still. The rest of this needs to be washed off still, and then I can coat everything in a coat of Zinsser Guards primer, which is supposed to lock in any residual glue from said wallpaper. So hopefully we won't have any problems, and then I can start painting this room, beginning with the ceiling. So I'll also have to take this down today as well. And I forgot to mention I did replace the radiator cover in here. I have baseboard radiator heating throughout most of my house, and I replaced the cover in here so that it wasn't that nasty aluminum one any longer. But let me go ahead and show you some of the vibes I was going for in this dressing room, this boudoir space. And if you're familiar with me, you're thinking, Bianca, red and pink, warm colors are not even your tones. What are you up to? Well, let's just imagine that the rest of the house is going to be green and teal and like peacock colors. So I wanted to go ahead and do something a little bit different up here just for the sake of variety. But as usual, we're going for maximalist. We're going for glam. We're going for like sort of decaying glamour, sort of that aged, slightly dusty glamour. Think fancy dressing room behind the scenes during the Phantom of the Opera at the Opera Garnier or something like that. And while pink may be a very classic choice for a dressing room or boudoir space, I obviously wanted to lean into the richer and darker versions of these tones. And because the furniture I ended up picking up for this space on Facebook Marketplace was of a more Empire or Regency sort of style, it's just traditional furniture from the mid-century era, sort of harkening back to those time periods. I was trying to look for examples of Regency era maximalism in this sort of pinky tone, and of course that led me back to the Brighton Royal Pavilion, which this is the space here that I was thinking of most when it comes to the Royal Pavilion, which is a maximalist chinoiserie fever dream, and I do quite like that space. It's over the top, it's a little too much, probably was at the time as well, and certainly is now, but I do love the visual decadence of it. It's quite intense. But after building up my Pinterest board of ideas, I decided to go with a pink and red color scheme. So while past me keeps scrubbing the leftover wallpaper glue residue off of the plaster walls with some hot water, a sponge and a bucket, old school style, I'll show you the little mock-up rendering that I made in Photoshop of the design I wanted to use for the paint scheme of this room. And originally I was going to paint the inside closet nook area with a bit of a mural, some decorative painting in there as well, but I ended up going with a different idea in the end. And of course I could always change my mind on that and add this in later. Honestly, I have no idea what's going on in here. Oh, it looks more pink on camera. That's good. So the inside is supposed to be dark red. The outside is supposed to be called rosy peach and kind of a dark, like think this kind of marble pink. And yes, there's a cat outside the door yelling at us. We have really weird light right now. I've cut in all the corners, well, except for down here, which took me a really long time. So I can finally go ahead and use the roller to do the ceiling and the rest of the walls, much to Oliver's chagrin, apparently. Ollie's, you're not allowed in here right now. Oliver, where'd you go? Ollie's, there you are. Listen, buddy, I'm got paint in here. You cannot come. No, I'm sorry. You're not invited. See, you're gonna get into trouble. You have to leave. I'm working with Benjamin Moore paints in here, again, not Spawn, and the colors I ended up going with were rosy peach and red oxide, and then I'm using onyx as the black in this space, and I was thinking about using it elsewhere as well, but I'm a little bit concerned it's not a dark enough black, which might be too goth of a concern to have, honestly. And for my border along the top of the room and onto the ceiling as well, I did just take a ruler and my level and sort of find a compromise because, of course, all the walls and the ceiling bits in here are not perfectly straight or level themselves. So I was kind of finding a balance between what was, truly level and what looked best because of the room itself not being perfectly level. But I drew about a 12-inch border around the top of the room and extended that about 10 inches out into the ceiling as well. Then for the scallops at the bottom of the border all around the room, I did just make a template out of poster board. I didn't use any sort of magic formula to arrive upon this size and shape of scallop. I just drew what I thought I would like and this mimicked it and repeated it over and over again, and I made this template so that I could sketch it onto the wall. Then I grabbed a small sort of craft style of paintbrush and went ahead and just free-handed around my scallops here. Of course, you could try and tape something like this off if you wanted to, but I wanted to keep the decorative painting in this room quite loose overall in general, especially with the spider webs that are coming in a moment, so I didn't bother to tape this off. I just free-handed everything as best I could. And I did use a small roller for the larger areas to fill those in. And over this pink, the red was a lot more saturated than it was over white later on the door and in the closet space. So that was nice, but it still did need 2 coats. So I was waiting for that first coat to dry. I went ahead and did some decorative painting on this fake chest sort of old box. This box is not actually old. I bought it at the antique store and it was kind of expensive for what it is because it's not a really old box. It's just a box made to look old. The bottom of it is a lot lighter. You'll see when I flip this over later. And the lock latch on the front is fake. It's not actually a lock or a latch in the way that the old boxes would have been. But this box felt rather dark in the room, so I decided to give it a little bit of decorative toll painting on here. This is all, again, just freehand and extremely loose. I could have done a much finer job on this if I had taken more than half an hour to throw all this paint on here, but I really just wanted to make this a bit folksy and like early American painted boxes, sort of a vibe like these. And don't worry, I will dial this down a little bit later and I'll show you how. But here's how our border is looking after its second coat, and it's time to do my spiderweb bunting, as I'm calling it, on the top of the scallops here. So I'm using a smaller round brush, sort of like an acrylic or watercolor painting brush here. I'm just going around with that color Onyx from Benjamin Moore, which, wow, using interior paint instead of acrylic paint is really annoying for doing finer things like this. So now I know. I did water this down a little bit, but it was not the most friendly to work with. But again, keeping things quite loose, I went ahead and painted on a spider web for each of the scallops here, or in between each of the scallops, and then sketched in a little tassel hanging from each of the points. And then it was time to, again, yes, age this a bit because it's, wow, a bit much right now. I took some matte clear craft varnish and mixed in some brown paint, sort of half and half there, brushed that on over the top of my decorative painting here, if we can call this that, and then I wiped most of it off. The key here is just to leave enough that it looks old and slightly dirty and like it's been in somebody's back garage for a while. And I think this distressing really saved this project because I really should have taken more time with the decorative painting on this, but decisions made while on a lot of cough medicine, they're not always the best. And at this point, my arms and neck were quite tired from doing the rest of this, but I wanted to go ahead and paint a ceiling medallion around where the light fixture would go in this room. I was originally going to add more spiderweb action to this medallion as well, but my neck hurt just too much after trying to get the darn light fixture down and put the new one up. So for now, I'm leaving it a bit more streamlined. And at this point, I could finally remove the plastic from the floor, protecting the new carpet, and I built my giant clothing rack for the back wall of this space to turn this from just another room into a closet. And I installed my new light fixture in this room, which is so much prettier than a sad white ceiling fan, I think we can all agree. This cross between a flush mount and chandelier with big glass leaves on it really again reminded me of the Royal Pavilion in Brighton, that kind of campy, tropical, slightly chinoiserie vibe, was a fixture that I found on Wayfair, although of course I added color change LED bulbs. I did hang up a curtain rod that spans the room in front of the clothing rack as well, so that I could hang curtains back here to protect my clothes from light and dust and cats, potentially, though they technically won't be allowed in here. And at this point, I could go ahead and start moving furniture into this room. So here's the vanity in its nook with lots of decor pieces and nonsense laying all over the place. Everything in here was quite a mess while I was deciding on what I was going to use in this room, what I was going to hang up on the walls. I did just use command strips to hang everything because I don't want to deal with putting nails or screws into the plaster. And here is the vanity stool that came with the furniture that I picked up on Marketplace. Clearly it needed a little bit of help. There were so many holes from various upholstery jobs over the decades that I decided to just go ahead and cut a new little seat out of 1/2-inch plywood, and then I upholstered that in the usual way. Big, thick 2-inch piece of foam, some batting, and then 2 layers of fabric, a layer of cotton twill, and then a layer of silk ribbed taffeta over the top of that. So I jumped on Etsy and grabbed this wide upholstery trim and fringe to clean this up and add another layer of traditional whimsy. And I just stitched this on using doubled all-purpose thread and a curved upholstery needle right into the side of the cushion. And while I was down here on the floor, I did glue some little turned wood feet to the bottom of the painted chest from earlier, just again to elevate this a little bit more, both figuratively and literally. And here's what the curtains look like, hanging in front of my clothes in the back of this room. I couldn't find the perfect pink curtain, and I ended up going with this lighter teal instead, and it really harkens back to, again, the color scheme of the Royal Pavilion in Brighton, so I think it actually worked quite well with the inspiration floating around in my brain in the end, but really it was an idea born out of not being able to find pink or coral curtains that were the exact tone, because the tone in here is quite strange anyhow. And I found these faux silk curtains on half-price drapes. But at this point in the process, I was just thrilled that I was going to be able to unpack a few boxes, start hanging up my clothes, and bring a few of my own things into a room and make a space feel more me. All right, pals, let me show you where I'm at. Other than, yikes. All right, we go inside. And it's a closet, a dressing room, if you will. So I have this entire back wall has its clothing rack, which I will show you in just a second here. But I've got these teal, I think the color was called peacock, faux silk, faux like Shantung du Peony curtains, keeping all of this, you know, as dust-free as possible. All of my hats are still in their archival boxes above here for now. I originally in my life wanted to have a larger closet room where I could take all the hats out of their storage and have them in display cases along like a huge wall or something. But that's just not the size of house I ended up with because I decided to live somewhere near town as opposed to the middle of nowhere. So here is the dresser I picked up on Facebook Marketplace. It does have a mirror as well. I'm not sure exactly what's going to live on this shelf, but for right now it's this little cloisonne vase. I'm not even sure that shelf is going to stay there long term, but for now it's living there. It's attached with a command strip so it can come down anytime if I need it to. But here is the spiderweb border, how that's living here at the top of the room. These are just all hand painted, so each spiderweb is different. I didn't want it to look too like planned, I guess, in a way. I wanted it to be freeform and hand painted in here and not too serious because this is just my dressing room. It's just for me, but I do think it is quite fun, and we need more gothic spiderweb bunting in life. Anyway, this is currently where some of my jewelry is living. I'm not sure all of this will stay here. I do have a little glittery gold owl wearing a hat right now. This hat honestly just needs to go back in its archive storage, but for now it's chilling on this owl. I do have some bracelets over here and earrings, and then one of my beaded beetle terrarium situations. And I have my cellulite hair combs because I don't have a place for them yet, so working on that. Currently I have most of my jewelry that I've unpacked is just sitting in its trays inside of this dresser, but it's too heavy for this dresser to be stacked inside the velvet trays in there this way. I just can't handle having my jewelry inside of a dresser like this, like a clothing dresser anymore. It needs its own spot. So I've hopefully devised a plan for that will actually be going into the other closet across the room eventually. So I'll do a full closet tour when both of these rooms are finished. But for now, this room is nearly done, and that's what we've got. And obviously this extra storage stuff down here that doesn't have a home yet will not be there in the end because it doesn't look very attractive down there. But yes, this is just not the way forward, pals. I love my velvet trays, but stacking them up like this means I can't exactly see. I mean, I have a kind of encyclopedic knowledge of what silly brooches I own, or have made in this case, but I would like to have this in a way that's much more accessible and easy to grab what I'm looking for, other than, you know, stacked 4 trays deep in a very heavy drawer that's like this is an old piece of furniture probably from the 50s or 60s, at least, if not a little bit older. And it doesn't have like those like smooth roll tracks drawer systems going on here. So it's like very clunky to get it in and out of here. So this is not going to work. I would like to use this dresser for like, I don't know, stockings, tights, scarves, belts, things like that instead. Things that are a little bit more lightweight. So that's hopefully what will end up going in here eventually. But for now, it's just housing my jewelry until I get the other closet room finished. But yes, this is my happy place. I kind of wanted this to look a little bit like a very fancy vintage store. So I could just come in here and shop my own closet, as it were. As we know, as I always say, I've been collecting things for a very long time. And in my 20s, instead of buying cocktails, I bought a vintage bracelet or a vintage brooch instead, because that's just a better use of $10 in my opinion. And then on this side of the wall, we have the former little 70s closet, now a vanity nook. And again, I have my spiderwebs over here. So this is the vanity again that matches the dresser that I picked up on Facebook Marketplace, and also the little vanity stool that I added a cushion to so that it can be usable again. And my one Victoria's Secret 90s Victoria's Secret slipper, because I'm hoping I can find the other one. I don't know where it got packed, but this one got packed by itself. We'll see. But here's the painted box that I did as well. And then I have hair tools in this one. I think I have nail polish stuff in this one. Foam rollers and eyeshadow that I don't use all the time are stacked inside of those. There's actually nothing inside the chest right now, working on it. And then inside of this drawer, I have put my makeup, and then my makeup brushes and things are all up here. I have some perfumes and of course decorative stuff up here as well. And then I decided to really go hard with the mirrors in this area. So instead of doing another like mural or hand-painted work inside of this closet area, I think I'm just going to fill it with tiny mirrors. I love collecting these when I'm out antiquing or thrifting and I see these little small mirrors for not much money. So I hope to pick up a few more and fill in this space with tiny mirrors because I think that would be quite fun. I did pick up a little trash can at Home Goods to have in here, and then I have some of my fashion plates framed over here on the wall. These are just cheap IKEA frames, and these fashion plates I picked up last time I was in London, so that's quite fun. A little memory in here as well. Also, fun fact, Michaels has these absolutely gargantuan tassels as part of their like spring Easter-y decor. And when I say they're giant, I mean like they are absolutely massive, huge, gorgeous tassels. So if you they come in this blue colorway, they come in pink, and they come in ivory. So if you are in need of absolutely gigantic tassels in your life, now is the time. They were on sale for like $8 when I was at Michael's last time. Not Spawn. In fact, not anything I mentioned to you is sponsored ever. I don't have any sponsors or never have. But I just really liked those tassels. And I actually really like this mirror as well that I fell in love with at Home Goods. I was just there to grab trash can and hangers real fast. And this mirror caught my eye because it's literally the most delicious table mirror ever. It's super gorgeous. I don't know how practical it will be to do my makeup, but it sure looks lovely over here. Over here, I do have my little parrot that I grabbed a while back that used to live in my bedroom when I lived in Colorado. And I have my framed epic brooch that I created its own little stand for. This brooch I picked up in Palm Springs. It's absolutely massive. It's the largest 1940s brooch I've ever seen, and so I had to have it. And then this little painted box I picked up at the antique mall, one of the antique stores in Colorado. This little box here, I've had it for ages. I forget where I bought that. I think I got that in like Williamsburg, Virginia when I was a little kid on my like Washington, D.C. school trip. I think that might be where that's from. And this is a little cigarette box from the 1950s or 60s that I'm just keeping bobby pins and hair combs inside of because obviously I don't smoke and I certainly wouldn't smoke inside. But that was a thing that you could find on a vanity in the mid-century era as a box for cigarettes. These vases are again also from Home Goods, not sponsored. These boxes are from the same sort of collection as the tassels from Michaels. The boxes on top of that, these tins, are actually from IKEA, but from a long time ago. So you'll probably have to look secondhand if you want anything like that. But I did just stick a couple pieces of floral foam in these vases and then stuck large peacock feathers into them, which is really, another way you know that this room is going to be off limits to my cats is because I'm literally decorating with feathers in here, and they would love to chomp on those, that's for sure. And you can see here that I did put up some window cling, both so that I can film in this room without worrying about having to block the view out the window, and also because it is a dressing room, it makes sense to have a little bit more privacy in here. So I did put some of this static window cling film on here. You just get the film wet, get the window wet, and then stick it into place and trim the excess. It worked really easily. I'm super happy with how this came out. I'm going to be using the same film in the other little closet across the hall eventually as well. I can link this particular film for you below. Again, not sponsored, but if you're interested, I will link it below. This was one of the cheapest ones on the website, but I do think it's quite cute. On this side, I do have the little nightstand that came again with the furniture set that I found on Facebook Marketplace. I have a couple of boxes, an old hat box, and a couple of boxes just to put small little things in. This one's full of like the extra heel caps for my American Duchess shoes, for example. Just got to keep those somewhere, so it's kind of out of the way down there. This is my large terrarium that I made here on the channel a while back, several years ago now, to hold my beaded bug brooches, both the ones that I've made, and then also my small collection of Trove Lore embroidered brooches, which are what inspired me to try making my own in the first place, although those are like the couture version of what I do for sure, because the stitches are way smaller and they're so nice. And I do have some more fashion plates again in those gold IKEA frames. These ones are again from the 1880s, and I actually picked these ones up in Paris one time. So, wow, it's already spoiled enough to have a fancy dressing room, but it's not getting any better the more I talk. And I'm actually super happy with this light fixture in here. It's not the most perfect installation of all time, but you know, it was my first light fixture installation and I was working with a weird ceiling, so I'll give myself a pass on that. But it is this gorgeous glass and faux crystal little chandelier. It's supposed to be like a flush mount, like so. So it's not like a very long or like drapey chandelier, but I think it is still quite fun in here and yet still out of the way as well. And yes, the floor is extremely creaky in my old house. But behind the curtains here, I have, on this side, I have long sleeve tops, short sleeve tops. This is all dresses here in the middle. This is all like summer dresses for now. Wintry dresses and formal. And here, again, I have some more stuff just stored down here for now because I don't really have a home for anything. This side I have vests and short sleeve jackets, and then skirts that are not too long to put on this side, and the ones that are longer have to go up here. So the longer ones are hanging from this top rack. We have skirts, some trousers, some vests and jackets and skirts. So it's kind of skirts on this side, tops are on that side back there, and then dresses in the middle. But again, all this might get rejigged once I open up the extra hanging space in the closet across the way. So this is kind of just hanging in here for now. Hats are kind of in here for now. Random shoe boxes in here for now. We'll see how all this gets redistributed and reorganized once the other room is finished. But overall, I'm really pleased with how this room is coming together, and it's nice to have one space that feels clean and nice and me in the house at this point, because the rest of the place is still such a mess. And in here we have the nice new carpet, and it smells like paint and carpet in here. It smells new and fresh. There still are a few things to finish up in here. Some of the paint needs to be finished up, including down here. I was not able to find tall baseboards like this to match in, so I need to go ahead and just paint a black stripe that's like the same height to match at least until I can find baseboards that will work in here. I still have some touch-ups to do behind the radiator cover as well, and then on this door, because this was taking many coats of red to finish this off in here, so I need to be able to actually tape crisp lines and finish this off, and I might do decorative painting in the insets on the panel of the door later on. We shall see, but you can see this needs another coat of red because it still looks quite bright compared to what it looks like on the ceiling. Again, a lot of things are going to get reorganized once I have the other space available to me, so I'll give you a full closet tour later down the line. So yes, this is the first mostly finished room here in my house. Again, I do have a few touch-ups and a few final things to fix in here, and I have to reorganize everything as I said once that other closet space is done, but I'll walk you through that fiasco when we get to that video later on. Thank you so much for your kind words and patience with me as I go through this giant transition and try my best to get settled. It's taking me a lot longer and has been a lot more weirdly convoluted and slightly cursed than I had been expecting, but that's all right. It's worth it in the end to finally have a space I can decorate to my heart's whimsical desires. And thank you so much to my patrons for making my work and my dreams possible. Now, technically I'm supposed to be painting the second coat on a ceiling downstairs, so I better de-glam and go and do that. I'll talk to you again here real soon. Bye.